genuinely to be welcome to the show Gerry Sweeney. Gerry is CEO of CIX, formerly known as Cork Internet Exchange. Hello, Gerry.
Hi, Garry. It's great to be with you.
Like every great brand, you've evolved from a real name to a three-letter acronym, like every good technical company needs to, right?
And then we started putting the word cloud in front of it. So it's Cork Internet Exchange Kicks, and now it's Cloud Kicks. So every 4 years, we decide we need to rebrand.
Just when somebody, I guess your marketing people will always tell you, just when somebody's just about to get a hook into what you are, they want to change, whereas engineers are quite happy.
Yeah. And I have a daughter who is working full-time in marketing. She was with me a few years. She's gone to London now, but she was the one that insisted on the Cloud Kicks change. So I take no responsibility for the last one.
Well, there you go. It's like probably like a lot of myself. But if it goes badly wrong, you take the blame. If it goes really well, give it to everybody else.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So Gerry, you're joining us from Cork. I have to tip my hat to you, because with all the explosion and the diversification of the digital infrastructure industry in Ireland, apart possibly from the lads in Black Knight, you're probably one of a very small number outside of the greater Dublin area that actually has and is making some money, I hope, from digital infrastructure in Ireland.
We're doing quite well. We're doing quite well. I see a photograph on the background there to your right, to my left, of Tom Raftery.
Yeah.
And Tom was involved in helping to set up this business before he moved to Spain. So yeah, there was a famous pizza party that occurred in my house in August of 2016, I think. A couple of people interested in there being a data center in Cork came to my house for pizza. And I think at this stage, there's a few people claim to be at that meeting that I don't ever remember attending. But
I think it might. I think it might have been before 2016. Would it be 1996?
No. Sorry. 2006. I beg it. Of course it was. Yes. When you get to my age, you lose the decades. Okay.
Listen, Gerry. I don't know about you, but 2020 and 2021 was just one blur. So, let's allow ourselves, because we're defining the rules, to have as many senior moments as we want.
Yeah,
right?
I'll challenge you. I'll beat you on it. Okay.
You'll beat. So that room was a bit like the GPO. There was a lot of people not there that were there. And can I ask you, obviously, it's well documented and written, foreign direct investment, Ireland, we were floppy disks, and then suddenly we were data centers, and that's now Word, Excel goes out of fiber optic cables. Cork, tremendous tradition, obviously, of foreign direct investment in its own right, with security and maybe pharmaceuticals, and but it wouldn't necessarily have been an automatic place for a hosting center. So, what was the confluence of ideas that decided we're going to make this happen?
I remember about 10 years ago being asked, why did we choose Cork as a location for our data center? And the answer was very simple. I was born here. There's no, that's it. There was no other choice. So I actually had a software business back in the noughties, and we were hosting in a data center in Dublin, which when we moved in was called Inflow, if I remember correctly, and then they were bought by DEG, and they ended up, I think they went through one other lifestyle, and now they're Equinix. I can't remember which DB, whatever they are, but the one in Kilcarbery Road there. So I was using a rack in that data center. So I was one of the first users of a rack in a data center. And when the metropolitan area network came to Cork, we had access to fiber, and we brought in an enormous pipe, 10 megabits from Smart Telecom. It was unbelievable at the time.
And it worked.
We started self-hosting. It did, yeah, it did. It did. So we moved out of Actually, I have a little funny story to tell on that. We moved out of what was then DEG, and we put our servers here in Cork. And about a year later, there was a financial problem, or there was a restructuring, I'll put it that way, with the fiber provider. We won't mention who it was. And I rang DEG in Dublin, and I said, look, I'm terrified that if the fiber provider goes bust, I lose connectivity to the internet. Can I put my servers back in the car and drive to Dublin and put them into your data center? And the guy said, let me go check with my boss, okay? And he came back, he rang me back about 15 minutes later, and he said, we just found your exit letter from our data center. And it is the nicest, friendliest, most pleasant and thankful letter we've ever received. And if they go dark, you put your servers in the back seat of your car and be up here and we'll make you live, okay? So it's an example of, don't burn bridges, make friends everywhere you go. And I think that's a good example of it. Nothing happened, by the way. The company was bought out and the fiber connection stayed up.
No, but it's a great learning because as you're observing, even within the digital infrastructure space in Ireland, as we've grown, and as skills have been acquired by companies in Ireland, designing and building, maintaining infrastructure, the demand for those skills internationally are massive, as you know, because there's a huge, Ireland is like 8% of Europe. And if you've got the skills, but one of the things, and it bears true to what you're exactly saying, is as the community gets bigger and people are coming out of different companies, everybody should be respectful and nice to each other, because you genuinely don't know who you're going to be working with, who you're going to be working for, whether they're going to be colleagues or whatever. And it's as you said there, it's quite it's often harder to be a devil than to be a saint. Just be nice, irrespective. And I guess that's one of your attributes, Jerry. You're a terribly nice person. And that attribute, if we were to look back over the last 30 years, isn't always attributed to very successful, ball-hard business people. So what would you attribute? You are successful. You have a lovely business in Cork. You've foreign direct investment. You've got local, everything. What have you done in that time? Have you surrounded yourself with people that have other skills? What has made you realize that there are other skills and people you probably need to have hanging out with you?
The first thing is thank you for describing him as being terribly nice, but you do realize you used the Cork phrase terribly nice, okay? He's awfully friendly.
Okay, you're a langer then. You're a langer.
That's
Is that better?
Garry, I don't see myself as a business person at all. When I was a kid, I was a mechano, a Lego and a mechano freak, and I just have a bigger set of mechano. Okay, so the business is secondary to the technology and to the fun, and I think when I look back on the people that have worked with me, they've gone on to do amazing things. I see Kicks as a fourth level educational establishment. Okay, I have friends in very high places because they all got fantastic jobs when they left here at the age of 26 and 27. Okay. And some of them have remained friends, and I love it when people stay in contact. So yeah, we've always been attractive to engineers, and we've been a very good proving ground, I think, for engineers going forward. And Garry, I'm in business 39, 40 years now. So I was in business long before we had a data center. So that pedigree of people going through the business, and I've calculated that in the businesses I've had down through the years, more than 1,000 people have worked for my companies. So we've been around a long time, and we've had several variations. And of those 1,000 people, 980 of them, okay, are engineering graduates of some sort, certificate, diploma, degree, whatever.
Yeah. But often, isn't it true, probably even more so now, that you can have all the knowledge you want, but unless you know how to apply it to a problem, you can often end a very frustrated life because you've solved a great problem that nobody actually has any value with. And I guess that's what you try and do. I constantly look at you. You're trying to identify what are the challenges and trying to be part of the solution rather than just for the sake of it prove a technical, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I resonate with what you're saying there. There are lots of technical problems that I know the solution to, but there's no interest in the market, perhaps because of an education issue. And all you can do in that situation is actually sit and wait. I heard two advertisements on the radio this morning while I was having breakfast around energy. ESB are getting people to sign up for smart meter program, and they're telling people that when the wind is blowing, okay, you can dry your hair. The other ad is from Enalex, okay, about a DSU. I've been talking about these things for 10 years, and so if something is technologically correct, it may not be market correct, and it may take a while for it to come around. So the problems you must solve are the ones where a customer rings you up and he says, I have pain, because you have a proven market and you go out and deliver that. And if you have a theoretical concept, you may be 5 years early. I had a friend once who rang me up and he said, Jerry, every time I get a new business idea, I ring you and talk to you about it because I know you'll have already tried it.
I love it.
You can be way too early. A lot of things take time to mature.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because only yesterday I read about every 2 or 3 years, Intel actually, who are which I didn't realize, one of the world's biggest venture capitalist organizations is Intel. And they invest an awful lot of their investment in R&D, and they do this thing is, why do startups fail? And nearly at the top, or it may not be in the top, no market need. In 2022, Jerry, imagine that most startups fail because of no market need. But I could understand that.
Yeah.
Because and I hope you resonate with this. Always play with your head up, whether it's soccer or business.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I see a lot of people and they have a great idea and they play with their head down the coding side and they code it to such an expertise that they don't lift their head. Right? That's what you're saying. Look around, ask 10 people, if I did this, would you buy it? And if more than 5 of them say, yes, I would, then it's probably, its time is coming. Is that what you're saying? Whereas if less than 5 say, it's great, wonderful, but we need to get over this step first. You're so right.
All the business successes that I've had in the 38 years, they all started out with my view of the market. And then the market tells you what they actually need, and it becomes totally different. Garry, can I throw in something on Intel there? Because you mentioned Intel, okay. I have a degree in, it's supposed to be electrical engineering, but it was electronic engineering in UCC. And in final year, I did, I can't remember the name of the subject, but the textbook was Physics and Technology of Semiconductor Devices. And my first job was with Analog Devices in Limerick. And I decided to keep that textbook because it was a cookbook on how to make chips. It was written by a guy called Andy Grove. And it was on my desk in Analog Devices for 3 years. And sometime around 1990, 95, I can't remember. So I heard, that the CEO of Intel was a guy called Andy Grove. And I went, that name is familiar. Where have I heard that name? And then I realized I had a book written by Andy Grove. Now, here's the thing. The guy who wrote the definitive textbook on how to make chips became the CEO of Intel. And the current CEO is a guy, I pronounce it wrong now, but his name is Gerstner. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. But Gerstner's claim to fame, I know he was off in VMware and whatever, but he designed the 486. And if you're as old as I am, you know how seminal a product the 486 was. And I adore seeing companies where the CEO is an engineer. Bill Gates, wrote the installer for the Altair computer on the plane by hand without testing it on the way to sell the product.
That's right.
It's engineers. Whatever you say about Elon Musk, he's a fantastic engineer, and it's engineers that make. I'd love to get statistics on this, but my guess is that the high-tech companies, like Sergey and Larry, are software engineers. The guy who set up Akamai is an engineer. So yes. I'm engineer biased. That's what I'm saying.
And I guess that's wonderful. Knowing what your correct level of incompetence is in any sector or any part of the business is a thing called self-honesty. So I guess is that when you get to a certain level where you can't bluff a spreadsheet or a balance sheet anymore, get someone else who knows more about it. And that's where these people can, it's when they try and be all things to all men, everything. You said earlier, in honesty, you're not a businessman. So but you're not 20 odd years in business without having business acumen around 40. You. 40 years in business without having good people around you in or on your business that tell you stuff, right? So digital infrastructure, Jerry.
Sure.
Whether that was a punch card 60 years ago, which was part of digital infrastructure, or what you like to call yourself today, which is an edge location. One of the things that we are constantly challenged, in my opinion, about talking back to your question about engineers, we've an awful lot of people talking an awful lot about engineering of the center, and very few people that talk very much about the value of the data. And they're two very different things. One is changing the world, the data. The center is just what we need to keep the rain off it and keep it all moving around. What do you think, in your own opinion, is the biggest misunderstanding about digital infrastructure, including data centers? And is it just change? Is it just time? Is it when people stop talking about it, we know we're moving to the next phase? Or what are your own observations on? Because
okay, so there is a danger that I will drop down to too deep a level on that question.
I'll bring you back up because I can't
understand. Feel free to grab me by the collar and pull me back.
I absolutely will, Jerry.
All right. So I would describe my entire life as a journey into data, it's so this is where you feel free to cut me off, okay? Because this is my story.
When you do three-letter acronyms in a row, that's the time to move on, right?
No, there'll be no three-letter acronyms. So I found I had a talent when I was stupid in national school, okay, because it was all Irish and whatever, okay, and I was no good. When I went into secondary school, in first year in secondary school, I met a new breed of teacher. They were called science teachers. And I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class in 15 seconds. Okay, it was unbelievable. And I got a huge degree of confidence from that. And I adored physics. I could learn biology and I could learn chemistry, but I didn't need to learn physics. I instinctively understood Archimedes' principle and the law of the lever. They were so obvious to me. It was okay. So I became interested in things, and I was a child of I was a teenager of the 70s, and we had the oil crisis. And I felt that was an energy problem. So I said, okay, I need to start focusing on energy. So in physics for the Leaving Cert, I learned about kinetic energy and so on. So I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and I went into UCC. They didn't do mechanical engineering in UCC, and I thought electrical was the closest. And I was horrified. I was absolutely horrified because they started to teach me about data. Dr. Jerry Rickson gave us a lecture on the first week about geosynchronous orbit of satellites. And I went, I'm in the wrong course. I'm in the wrong place. This has nothing to do with energy and whatever. Okay. And in third year, I went working with a wind energy company that was run by a guy called Dudley Stewart. He's still very active in the industry. And third year, it was before they had placements. I just went and looked for a job for the summer from the guy. And I turned up on Monday morning, and we will get the data, I promise you. I turned up on Monday morning, and I went in the door, and he had fellows making water, windmills and whatever. And he walked me across the door, and we were walking past all these interesting machines, lathes and milling machines. And I was saying, kind of, where are we going? I want to work here, okay? And he said, and these words changed my life. He said, this place, he said, is full of panel beaters. Unless we can link this equipment to the grid, we will never have a business. And we walked up the stairs to a lab over the canteen, and climbing those stairs, I became an electronics engineer. I ceased to be a wannabe mechanical, and I became an electronics engineer. I went into analog. I intended to get into the power industry, and I got a job offer from ESB, and I got a job offer from Analog Devices. And I took the job offer from Analog Devices because I believed I would learn more. But I also believed, okay, I would get back into the power industry at some time in my future. In analog, I became a test engineer for analog to digital converters and digital to analog converters. And I got a huge insight into data. I started to understand video from a digital perspective. I started to get interested in people like Alan Turing, and I started getting interested. Another hero of mine, his name escapes me at the moment, senior moment number 2. He's called the father of data. It'll come back to me. So he was the guy that kind of worked for AT&T, okay, to do long distance digitalization. And I started to remember stuff in college that I didn't understand. I started to remember things around the kind of physics that statistical physics, okay, entropy, and I started to get interested in stuff that I learned in college around time, and I started to see the significance of data, and I started to realize, okay, that I was on a transfer path throughout my life, okay, from physical things, levers and floating bodies, to energy. And from energy, I ended up in data. And I now realize that data is by far and away the most important property. And there are physicists that reckon that data is the only property. There is nothing else in the world except data. Now, Garry, do you want me to go one more story into that, or do you want to move on? Garry, have I lost you? I'm going to assume that I'm live on my own and that Garry will rejoin me. So let me tell you the story I was planning to, I was offering Garry there. So when I was in college in second year, remember in 1978, computers were very rare. They were very big and very expensive, so I'd never seen one. And when I went into third year, we had the opportunity of doing computer science for the first time. Sorry, of doing computer programming for the first time. And it was a subject, but I missed the first year because I had to go to hospital to get my appendix taken out. And I turned up on the fourth lecture. Yeah, people are confirming that I'm on my own. So I turned up at this lecture on computer programming, and I could not understand. Hi, Garry, are you back?
Yeah, I've been listening in. I just
okay. No problem. I thought it was the first time that you'd ever had a guest that was so boring that you decided to leave. So anyway,
listen, Jerry, I've had guests leave, but never has the host left.
Never has the host left. I went into third year. Remember, in 1978, we didn't see computers; they didn't exist. And I missed the first 3 lectures and went to my first computer programming class. And I remember Dr. Dick Stoddart, okay, was at the board, and he wrote down. By the way, I met Dick later in life, and I asked him, "How would you like me to refer to you?" Because of course he was Dr. Stoddart, and he said, "Remember," he said, "my name is Dick." He said, "I am a doctor, and it's not the other way around." Okay, so anyway, so Dick was at the Go ahead.
One of the great things about this whole story is the influence of people, good people that you were prepared to listen to in our lives, and even that first message that you flipped over. There were no internships, so you just went out and you got yourself a bit of a job. But you did have to get up off your ass and actually pursue that. It didn't come to you.
Yeah.
And isn't it one of the attributes that maybe we need to concern ourselves about today in 2022 is that you can be as knowledgeable and talented as you want, but you need to get up off your ass, don't you, a little bit, and pursue it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is not a dress rehearsal. Actually, I've heard this so many times from other people, but it merits saying. The easiest way to make a friend is to ask for help.
Absolutely.
And you very rarely get turned down. If you go to somebody and say, I need help.
Absolutely.
Very rarely do you get turned down. People are really keen to help. And it is one great way of making, And I think vulnerability is a great attribute. I'm an idiot, help me, is the least aggressive introduction you can make.
Well, that sort of brings us back to sort of why you are who you are, where you are, so successful as you are, is that human attribute is now called, because everything has a label, right? It's called emotional intelligence. Now that we've come to 2022 and there's books being made and money to be made from it, back in the day, it would have been called cop on. Go out and talk to a farmer. He'll tell you all about what you need to do in what order and why. And if you can apply that to what we're doing, do you sometimes get a bit frustrated, as I, with some labels that are put on some basic behaviors that maybe we called them in the past?
I would not see myself as being somebody that is intrinsically high IQ, EQ. I would see myself, I would have been awkward, socially awkward as a teenager, and I would have been perceived as a nerd. EQ is interesting in that I'm absolutely convinced as you get older, your EQ improves, and you may lose computational ability, but your EQ improves, and it's your family and your kids, your wife, that are your educators in the EQ area. So I cringe at some of the stuff I did and some of the stuff I said when I was younger, and I wish I could go back and remake some of those things. So
Jerry, you just have to be, like I, very happy that there wasn't mobile phones back in those days, because only you have them mostly in your mind. They're not floating out there to be reproduced. I can think late nights in Grafton Street with hot dogs comes to mind. But anyway, so we've a couple more minutes, and I want to just ask you, on an optimistic note, because you are an optimistic person and you know the science, are you, in the main, optimistic of the role of tech along with human behavior in helping some of the global challenges we have today?
I actually can't separate them, Gary. I believe, and I'm probably in the small minority here, I believe, that tech beats politics. Somebody once said physics beats marketing every time. And so I think it's all down to technology. So if you ask yourself, how can we survive on this planet? We just passed 8 billion people, but the birth rate has gone down, so the 8 billion people is because we're living longer. If you ask yourself, one of my heroes in terms of this talking is actually Elon Musk, and I know he's not very popular at the moment, but some of the stuff he says is brilliant. And he has a brilliant way of defining problems from a technical perspective. A good example of that is when somebody asked him, why are we spending money on going to Mars? He said, no, going to Mars is not that important, he said, but it's probably as important as lipstick. So I think we should spend the same amount of money on lipstick. Another example, is the United States and the USSR both spent $10 trillion on developing nuclear warheads, none of which were ever used except for tests. If that $20 trillion had been used to develop fusion, then we would not have a climate crisis now.
Yeah.
So I can't separate. The future survival of the species depends upon our success as engineers. And I say that as an engineer with no bias whatsoever. Of course I'm biased, but I do believe it. It is my perspective.
Gerry, I love the way you totally contradicted yourself there at the last, because it's a wonderful place to draw a line in this.
Okay.
With no bias. Of course I'm biased. I'm an engineer. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I couldn't have finished a chat with you any better, because what it means is you're constantly thinking and you're not settling, and you're okay with the fact that, you know, you may not have been right, but you've used more data or information or people to change your mind, because I think that's our biggest it's our biggest negative, is to get entrenched in any position. And Gerry, I genuinely think we could talk for another 4 hours, but we can't. So with that, Gerry Sweeney, thank you so much for accepting my request to come on the show.
Thanks, Garry.
It's been great, really good. Thank you so much. Gerry Sweeney, CEO, CIX in Cork.
Pleasure.